So, garage night again. Pete's in a lot of trouble here.
Yeah, no, I've been big old way. So you got the whole rear swing arm and shock back on. It's looking nice and shiny.
Yep.
Which I'm happy about. And now I've got the front end off. And that's going to get a good old clean up and make sure everything's pucker there. But more importantly, I have my nice brand new second hand wiring loom. Because the original one got a little bit corroded. And it's going to take a lot of time to repair.
So, I'd call it a wiring harness. But
wiring harness, yes. All the wires that make up the various bits.
The electrical system of the bike.
That look quite simple when you're from the outside, when you can't see too much, but then when you get it, it's sort of like this. And you sort of think, okay, getting it off isn't so hard. But it's reattaching this to the bike that proves the problem. This is the funny thing about this bike. It's got some really good connectors. These nice waterproof ones here.
Show me that again. Hang on.
So you can see in the back there, it's totally sealed. Yeah,
there's like a little concertina boot sort of thing that goes in there, isn't there?
That's probably a good description. Yes, it's a concertina boot thing that keeps all the water out. Well done. And then you've got a combination of other things like this. Yeah, which is does not have a concertina boot thing on it. And this one sits down at the bottom of the bike and collects all the water.
Ones.
So that was the first one to go on the old wiring loom.
Yeah, they're just open to the elements. Indeed. Why they do that, I have no idea. They do it on lots of bikes. They put good, as you say, waterproof connectors in some places, and then they put these shitty El Cheapo crap plastic ones in other places. But I mean, one solution I think I mentioned before is to pull them apart, make sure they're nice and clean, and then just get silicone and seal all that up with silicone sealant.
That's a good idea.
So we saw Trent greasing the swing arm bearings the other week, and now the swing arm's back on. It bolts onto the engine casing there, and basically there's a big bolt that goes through with a nut on the other side, Trent, yeah?
That's exactly right, yeah. Bolts through the frame, through the swing arm, through the back of the engine, back out through the other side of the swing arm, the other side of the frame, and the bolt and the nut just clamp it all up solid together. So the spaces in the middle of the bearings get all clamped up between the engine and the frame. And then obviously the swing arm just spins on the bearing.
Yeah. What's the benefit of having the swing arm pivot in the engine like that? Is that just to make it more compact, or is the engine more rigid than the frame?
When the swing arm moves up and down, the chain gets tighter and looser because the pivot point of the swing arm is not in the centre of the sprocket. So as the swing arm goes up, the chain then gets tighter.
Closer those two, the closer the centre of the sprocket, which we can't see because it's covered up.
It'll be in here, just about there.
It's a cog, big cog on the back wheel, small cog on the engine, and the closer that pivot of the swing arm is to that, the less variation there's going to be in the tension of the chain.
That's exactly right.
There we go.
Well explained.
This is the shock absorber basically. Big spring. Shock absorber inside, so the coil runs around the outside of it. Pete, there's a few adjustments here. Do you want to acquaint?
I'm glad you asked me that, Waz. I'm glad you asked me that.
You don't know what they're for, do you?
Well, I do. It's just a case of which one's which. This shock is quite advanced actually. It's got high and low speed compression damping,
right,
which is here. This one inside is one, and the nut on the outside is the other. High speed doesn't mean the speed your bike's travelling. It's the speed at which the swing arm has to move up, or the shock has to compress.
So how sharp the bump is that you hit, basically.
So if you're hitting a bigger wallow, that's going to be a slow speed compression adjustment that you have to do to make it better. Or if you're hitting a whole lot of, I don't know, rocks or something like that that's causing it to go like this, then that's the high speed. You also have here a preload adjuster, hydraulic preload adjuster.
Not all bikes have this, and this is pretty flash.
Yeah, it's quite handy actually. If you're going from riding by yourself with no gear to yourself with some luggage on the back, or yourself with a pillion on the back, then you can adjust this. And as you tighten it,
you tighten this screw here.
Yeah, you just tighten this, and what it does is it pushes the ring, pushes this whole collar down. So it just compresses the spring a bit more, so that the suspension starts working a little bit later on. It also has a rebound compression adjustment.
So it's pretty advanced. That controls the rate at which the spring returns, basically.
Yeah, exactly.
The job of the spring is there to absorb the bumps, and the shock is that the coil is running over is there to control the spring. Control the way that the spring reacts. So the spring is just going to go boing, 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 and the shock is actually there to stop it, to make it bounce once, basically.
It's got oil running through small holes.
Yeah.
And this, I guess, adjusts the flow of the oil through the holes to make it harder for the oil to flow through the holes, or easier, depending on what you want it to do.
Yeah. Some bikes just have two, like, big nuts here, and you get a rod and a hammer, and you just have to bang those nuts around in order to, and they become butchered over time.
Well, also what happens is you bush your knuckles as well a little bit when you're doing that, and then that's what normally happens too. Or you get your thumb with the hammer.
Yeah.
We've all done that before.
So the oil's going into the beamer ahead of starting it up. 2.2 litres, Richard tells me. Well, this is a dry sump, this bike, is it? What? It's a dry sump. It has a dry sump. Trent, help us out, Trent.
What?
Is this a dry sump bike, this one? Yeah, so explain what that means.
It means there's no oil really kept in the engine. On a wet sump engine, all the oil sits actually in the engine. So the bottom...
Sloshing around in the bottom of the engine.
It sits, all the gears sit in it, and it's all...
There's a pump there that sucks it up and squirts it around where it needs to go.
There's a pump in there, it pumps it all up, goes up right up to the top of the engine, and it all drips back down and back down to the bottom again. On a dry sump, often you'll find they use the frame as the oil reservoir. On the old BMWs, they used to use the frame. On these ones, they've changed to an actual...
Because the frame's hollow.
Yeah, exactly.
So this is a tank.
Obviously, the oil still goes into the engine, it still drops down to the bottom, but they have a pump that picks it up and pumps it back up into the oil tank. Saves all the crank and the gears and all that sort of stuff, the clutch all running actually in oil. Other than that, I'm not sure. You tell me.
Well, does it say...
You get the engine lower in the frame.
True, yeah.
The engine is lower in the frame.
You can have more ground clearance on the dirt bike, I think.
Obviously, it's true. If you've got a reservoir at the bottom of the engine for all the oil, obviously that's going to make the engine lower. So you have to raise the engine up in the frame, or the engine will be lower and catch on rocks and that sort of stuff. So.
Yeah. So
You got that?
yeah, how far off are we?
Not far at all.
One of the problems with a dry sump, some of the oil will be in the engine all the time. Most of the oil will be in the tank. Now when you're changing the oil, it might take 2.2 litres. You don't want to pour 2.2 litres in the tank, because the tank's not going to hold 2.2 litres and it's going to start overflowing. So you will need to put in enough, maybe 1.5 litres, something like that. Put the top on, crank the engine over, that'll start pumping the oil down actually into the engine, get it distributed all around the engine, the oil level will go down, then you can put the rest of the oil in.
Right.
If you just try and put it all in one go, it's just going to spill everywhere.
You might have a filling point somewhere here on a dirt bike, hey, but just behind the headstock, and that's where you put your oil on. My old XR600 had that.
Yeah.
So that was where you filled it up with oil.
Yep, same with the
Just
old
in here.
F650s, they were exactly the same, like in behind there.
Pete's bike, dry sump as well, slightly different oil tank arrangement. It hangs down the front of the bike, in front of the front engine cylinder, and below the radiator, is that right? Because this is a water-cooled bike.
Yeah, indeed, yeah, this is down there. And you fill it up on the other side. Because it's a dry sump, it's got a lot of ground clearance, this bike. If they had a wet sump, it would probably be down to here.
You might see on, if I ever get the elephant going, it's a wet sump bike. Oh, who's that? Bloody phone. Better let him get that.
Hello? Oh, yeah. No, I forgot.
Thanks for getting the beer, Fiona. Thanks for the beer, Fiona.
I forgot. Right?
We'll do it tomorrow.
3 forgets, yep. Yeah, I'll bring them home tomorrow. Right, can I go now? Okay, bye. I've got the 3 things I was supposed to do today.
Naughty. 3 things. You
Bring home this, bring home that, bring home something else, and that was 3 fails and 3 attempts.
3 strikes and you're sleeping in the shed, mate. Righto, so here's my hub that I pulled out of the elephant wheel last week.
Didn't we do this last week?
Yes, with the spokes hanging off everywhere. Now, we were discussing last week the issue that some of these spokes have a kick in them and some of them don't, but there doesn't seem to be any rhyme or reason to it. You'd think that the outer spokes would have a steeper kink in the end, but it seems to be just all mixed up.
Okay.
What a prick of a job. How many of these have I got to get out? 36?
36.
Jesus Christ.
5 minutes a pop, that's a whole lot of minutes.
Moment of truth. Battery installed, headlight on, auxiliary power in place. You want to hit the button?
I've got the fuel.
You've got fuel.
Got the oil. Got the coolant. I think we got everything right. So, in neutral.
Look at that. Does the engine always knock like that? It does have a bit of a knock to it, Trent. Is that normal? A bit of smoke coming off it. But that's just where there's cleaning stuff and oil deposits left from working on it, where, you know, a bit of oil's been left off parts. It's a sound that hasn't been heard in this shed for a while, to tell you the truth. Trent's getting really serious with this hub now. I was no good, so he's getting on with it. It's in the vise, and just having to smash those spokes out, really.
I've never seen spokes quite so corroded in there like these ones are. We may need to run just a right size drill down through these holes just to clean them up again before the new spokes go in.
Right. I can't believe I let Pete talk me into this project. So the last of these, they're just not going to come out, are they? Luckily, we have a cutting tool here, Dremel. There we go. Alright.
Cut, hit,
Swear, hit, cut, drink beer. That was that.
Bravo.
It's reusable, isn't it? You're saying the worst you've ever seen?
Yeah, it's fairly nasty, but I'm sure a bit of a sandblast, clean up all the holes and stuff, new set of spokes. It'll be like new. Better than new,
Yeah,
probably.
it wasn't much good when it was
Exactly
new, obviously.
Right. So it'll be better than new.
So, Pete, while we've been dicking around with wheels and stuff...
There's been a lot of dicking around down there by the sound of it. Yeah, I got the wiring loop in place.
Oh, cool.
Surprisingly.
Good idea, before you go on a big trip on a bike, to go right over the wiring, isn't it? Go right over every electrical connection on the bike.
It's a good idea. It's very difficult though, because they're very hidden away.
Yeah.
Unless you pull the bike right apart, almost.
But
It's very
really,
hard to see
shouldn't you do that anyway? Shouldn't you rip all the panels off and go, just
some
go
people
over
Some
everything?
people go and buy a new bike or a year-old bike and just go.
Just go.
And that's fine. But we tend to buy a bike, you know, a few years old, needs a bit of work, pull it all apart and have a look. And in that case, yes, it's a lot easier to grease or silicone them all up.
It's a
So I
mix.
definitely recommend it for sure.
It's a mixed bag, isn't it? Because you buy a brand new bike, you're paying top dollar, you get nothing extra with it. You buy a bike that's a couple of years old, the previous owner has probably put panniers on it, put a hot exhaust system on it that sounds nice, you know. They've done things to it that don't actually add any value to the bike, but they are valuable to you when you buy the bike. But you inherit also any problems that it has due to wear and tear.
Exactly right. The same is true of both this and my Africa Twin. They were both a lot cheaper than buying new. But they both came with a lot of accessories and a few problems. But you know, pulling it apart also gives you an idea of how it all goes together. So if you're on the side of the road, something stops working, you can hopefully track it down a little bit quicker than if you'd never taken it apart before.
Yeah.
The other good thing is also working out your toolkit. If you take the bike apart, you can see exactly which tools you need to take, so you don't end up taking lots of extra stuff that you don't need. Isn't that right, Richard?
Well, for me, I had the perfect amount of stuff. Your toolkit. I think that was my complete toolkit, wasn't it? And a sense of humour.
Alright, well we'll leave it there and we'll see you next time on
Garage Night.
I love the finish, eh?
We've all got to do it at the same time this time, not just me, okay? I feel really...
All right, 1, 2, 3. We'll see you next time on...
Garage Night!
Oh, sorry, I forgot.